you're live now.
Okay, thank you very much, Bernard and Eleftheria, for the invite and the introduction. It's a pleasure, and at the same time, it's a bit a new experience to present today through Zoom. I'll be presenting this work on exclusive data, price manipulation, and market leadership. We joined with Ichuan Gu of University of Liverpool, who may have not been able to join us today. But Leonardo from TSC is here, and as Bernard already mentioned, you may use him as the complaint department. Jokes apart, he may help in the discussion and with some of your questions. Okay, so let me get started. A little bit of context and motivation for what I'm going to talk about today. As you know, it will be about data. We have been, if you follow this series, we've been talking about data for several weeks now, more today. And we know that data are everywhere these days. Firms particularly collect, store, and analyze data about individuals. So we will be talking about individual level data. So we know data can come from many different sources, including exclusive contracts with data brokers. They could be from online tracking from websites, like Amazon has a lot of information about individuals. It could be from loyalty programs. But the main point is that wherever they come, there is a lot of data and of different types that are now available. So the profiles of individuals are very, very precise nowadays. And data can be used for a lot of activities. So in particular, here I will be focusing, the main focus will be on price discrimination, and effectively personal level data could be used to personalize pricing. So the important point here, as this quote from Estrella and Jacques 2019 says, is that firms do still use uniform prices for all consumers, but personalized pricing and personalized discounts are more and more common. So we are all familiar with receiving, for example, emails like that, just for you, personalized offer to get a nice dumper. I'm not sure it's nice, but okay, some may like it. And other type of personalized offer can land in our on our screen through email or other ways. So a few years ago, maybe personalized pricing was a sort of sci-fi textbook benchmark. Now maybe still is, but not so far away anymore. And another element important for what I'm going to talk about is the fact that many of these data are unique to firms. So the exclusive bit is important for us. Amazon, as we said, collects a lot of information about individuals, for example, histories of browsing, looking, and so they have so much information, and this information is exclusive. It's not shared with other firms. Likewise, grocery stores, so they know a lot about customers, what they buy in their store, what they where they stay, in which part of the supermarket they stay sometimes. So there is a lot of information that is unique to firms, and this could be important to deliver advantage over rivals. This knowledge could be important for competition. Okay, so one final piece of visualization that is important about data and about the setting that we'll be looking at is that in markets like the ones I've been mentioning in the examples previously, but generally in markets today, there's a lot of price monitoring going on. And so I have here a citation from the Portuguese report from the Portuguese Competition Authority, 2019. The report basically indicates that about half of the firms that they surveyed monitor the rivals pricing. And these are not only maybe small firms that you know, just basically they need to know what happens with others, but prices are also monitored by big retailers, like for example Walmart. And here again we have something that comes from the news from Reuters. Apparently also Walmart does a lot of data scraping to know about prices of Amazon, for example. So so basically it's very important for retailers to follow what happens with big players like Amazon, and difference in a few cents difference can be fundamental in losing a customer or gaining a customer. So this is a situation in which basically there is active monitoring of prices, and this is going to be important for us. This happens also in other more traditional sectors, like the grocery sector. For example, Seaton and Watterson have provided evidence that Tesco is one of the main, probably the leading grocery store in the UK, and they basically they shown that Tesco is usually the first to change its prices, and then other supermarket chains follow. Okay, so the main point here is that usually price leaders are monitored and other firms follow. So there is evidence of price leadership. So just to wrap up a little bit the introduction, the key ingredients of my talk and of our work will be exclusive access to consumer level data. So the fact that firms have access to consumer level data is going to be important, and important for us. Again, our model is going to be a model, so we exaggerate that, but there is a big heterogeneity between firms on how they access this data. So some firms have access to a lot more than other of these individual level data, and this is going to be important. The use that we focus on is pricing, and as I said, potentially this can be used for personalized pricing, personalized offers, and perfect price discrimination. And finally, the last element is monitoring and price leadership. So some firms are price leader and others monitor in order to adjust their strategy to that. Just to make sure you have in mind an example, maybe through the talk, so could be a good reference point. Our main, let's say, inspiring example, again, it may be a future scenario rather than what really happens in reality, but it could help to get the main point of the of our talk and the model. Basically, you could think about Amazon, who has a lot of individual level information, as we said, perhaps a lot more than a more traditional brick and mortar competitor like Walmart, who surely has also information, but in a lower amount. And Amazon can also do personalized pricing through Prime special offers for consumers that subscribe to their Prime program. And also we saw that Amazon is one of the most rated companies from Walmart itself. So in some way, this example can help, let's say, illustrate our setting and can help with our model. Okay. But of course, there could be other situations that that fit. Right. Let me tell you about what we do exactly in this paper. So the main research question we ask is how the exclusive information about consumers, so exclusive level information, affects firm strategic incentive. And in particular, we want to look at the incentives to lead or follow in price competition. So whether there is an incentive to lead or follow. Just as a refresher of standard game theory, you may remember that in price competition, when there is endogenous timing, firms usually like to be followers. And the incentive, it's quite intuitive, is that by being a follower in setting the price, in setting a uniform price, you can undercut effectively the leader, and so all firms would like to be followers. So we try to look in our research whether this can change in presence of exclusive data. So the fact that data can change and price discrimination can change this incentive. Of course, this is as a second motivating concern, motivating factor question. Clearly, when we talk about data, there is a privacy concern, a clear privacy concern, and we know a lot about that. But recently, we have also been talking about price discrimination and competitive concern. So data, use of data, and competitive concerns. So the big question that our research can to an extent contribute and so give some insight, but the question is bigger, of course, is whether big data are pro or anti-competitive. So there are different views in this debate. So according to some, big data can be a source of entry barriers, competitive advantage. According to others, they are not per se source of anti-competitive concerns because data can be non-rival, non-exclusive, and so access to data per se is not a worry. So there is a lot of discussion, of course, it's relevant for policy. And in a way, we can link to a recent report by Furman and others and colleagues for the UK government, who basically suggest that exclusive possession of data under some circumstances can lead to a lack of competitive pressure. In a way, our paper, and the next slide will explain that, can to some extent give one example of when this could be the situation. Okay. So just to give you the main message, so these are the questions. To give you the main message of the paper, basically everything will depend on profiled consumers, how many consumers are profiled in the market. When the amount of profiled consumer is not too small, then the firm holding data may want to be the price leader. So we'll show that can be the price leader, and the rival can be the follower. So we change a little bit compared to the standard theory. So not everybody wants to be the follower, but the access to exclusive data can give an incentive to lead. And if that happens, particularly when the number of profiled consumers is intermediate, then we may have a situation in which we have very high prices. So possibly anti-competitive situation. And coming to the last part of our title, we can have a sort of price manipulation by the leader. Price manipulation because the leader can essentially post a very high price and allow the follower without data to get all non-profiled consumers. So somehow it allows for undercutting by the follower, but only in one segment of the market. And then uses the personalized offer to match this very high price on the identified consumer segment. Okay, so there is a sort of segmentation, perfect segmentation, that leads to very high prices, and price discrimination can be of the type discussed before, which is very much the access to this data can be a concern from a competitive viewpoint. Okay. In the end, last point, if there are too many consumers that are profiled, so if everyone is profiled and there is it's on the list held by one of the competitors, then prices can become low again. So in some way there is a non-monotonicity in prices that will be showing. So that's really our story, main research question, and main findings in a way. I don't know if maybe now is a good moment for questions, or maybe after I discuss the literature. Bernard, did you get? Okay, all good? Okay, great. So let me tell a little bit about the huge literature that is coming up about data. Of course, it was not fitting in the slide, so all the papers that have been presented in the last weeks and will be presented should be in the related literature, of course, but we just stick to the most closed contribution. One traditional literature that we sort of contribute to, in a way, is the one on competitive price discrimination. Clearly, when we have competition, a traditional result, when we know when firms are symmetric, then personalized pricing, but any type of price discrimination usually makes the market more competitive, because there are many instruments and competition becomes very fierce. In our case, instead, because of the asymmetry in access to the information, we can have a situation where there is very high prices as a result, and that's what I was talking about before. There is also a more recent literature, perhaps, on data and how they change firm strategic behavior. Compared to them, some were presented a few weeks ago, like the paper of Paul. Again, quite related. Our unique, let's say, focus is on endogenous timing, and in particular on the ability to lead, which it's endogenous in our model, and as we show, it has an important effects for the outcomes under certain circumstances. And then finally, we can we sort of link to the quite established literature on timing in oligopoly games, and in particular, our result is a sort of complementing the results of Rabamir and Stepanova 2006 in the sense that in their case, it's heterogeneity in cost, so technological endowment of firm that drives incentive to lead rather than follow. So if one firm is very efficient, can be the leader. In our case, it's basically endowment of an immaterial asset like a list of consumers that makes the difference. Okay, so I can turn now to our model if there are no questions. Okay, great. So let me introduce you briefly to the model. So basically, the model, we start with a simple hoteling duopoly, like a textbook hoteling duopoly, with a mass one of consumers. The important thing is their location on the unit line, location called X. So very rather standard. One firm, as I said, possesses firm A, for example, possesses a unique data set on consumers. Consumers are profiled, and the access to the list of consumers, so these profiles of consumer, means knowing their location. And we know in the hoteling model, knowing the location tells you pretty much everything about the consumer and the preferences. So this is a situation in which part of the consumers are known to firm A. The consumers at the same time are completely anonymous for firm B. Firm B doesn't have this information about the consumer. So in a way, it's a very extreme assumption, but it can capture this exclusivity of information again as a modeling tool. Just to sum up from the perspective of firm A, the data holder, we have a segment of consumers which are known. We call them lambda. That's a percentage, let's say, of consumers that are profiled, and the remaining consumers are anonymous. Okay. As I said, for firm B, everybody is anonymous. Okay, all of them are not known. Okay, there is price competition. So firm A, let's say, located at the firms are located at the extreme. So firm A is located at 0, firm B at 1. And firm A, given the fact that there's access to this list of consumers, profiled consumers, can set a uniform price PA for everybody, for the anonymous consumers, and for the anonymous consumers, and the personalized pricing for consumers on the list segment. So consumers on the list segment would receive an email or would get an automated offer, a personalized offer, and only get that one. Okay. And of course, the personalized price is going to be a schedule that depends on X. Okay, so it will be adjusted to the location of consumers. The firm B can only set a uniform price PB that is available for everybody. Okay, so this is the scenario we consider. We make also some other assumptions that are rather standard in this type of models. So consumers have unique demand. They have a sufficiently high reservation value. This is needed to keep matters not too complex. So they're already quite intricate, as you will see in the next slides. But this simplifies a little bit the situation, and it's also important for our results. And there is zero marginal cost. Okay. So these are the assumption, and just to recap, so to make it hopefully even more clear, these are just the utility, pretty standard. Sorry, this should be PB. I apologize for the slip. That's the utility of consumer located at X, buying from A, so pretty much textbook. And here that would be the utility buying from B, which is located at 1, and the price would be PB. In terms of what it implies for the profits, remember that there are 2 segments, and actually I can show you with a graph. For the lambda segment, lambda share of consumers that are profiled, the segments, of course, can be of different sizes. The customers of buying from firm A will receive a personalized price on the red segment. Instead, for the anonymous segment of firm A, they would receive a price PA. Instead, the consumers of firm B, they receive the same offer PB. Okay, so that's just to illustrate the model all in once. Any questions up to now? No? All good? Excellent. So let me get to the timing, which is going to be important. In the first stage, firms A and B decide whether to choose prices at the same time, basically early or late. Typical endogenous timing game. So if they both choose early or both choose late, then we will have in a second stage a simultaneous competition in which they set price PA and PB at the same time. If instead firm A chooses early and firm B chooses late, then firm A is the price leader, choosing PA first, and B chooses PB second. Finally, if B chooses to be early and A to be late, firm B without the data can be the leader, and firm A is the follower. The data holding firm is the follower. Finally, in the third stage, the personalized offers are set, and the personalized offer can be adjusted perhaps faster. So that's why we assume they come late, and it's kind of quite typical in related papers that use a similar approach. So again, this is going to be the timing, and this is the game I'm going to talk about the rest. Okay. So just to fix idea and give you a little bit of a benchmark, this is summing up what I just said. What is important for us as a benchmark is that, as I mentioned also before, when there's no consumers profiled, so basically there's no list of consumers, what we usually observe is that there are two equilibria in this game. The two equilibria, it's a textbook example, is that either A leads or B leads, and the other firm follows. So basically there is this multiplicity of equilibria, but generally you would prefer to be a follower, following as higher payoff. Okay, so this is our benchmark situation when there's no list. And at the same time, our contribution will be to see what happens when lambda is gonna be different from 0. Okay, excellent. So now I can move on to the analysis, starting from the last stage. Is there any question? No? Okay, excellent. So right, so the third stage is when firms choose individualized offer, personalized pricing. Okay, so again, you can think about Amazon sending you on your Prime account an email, or saying, okay, you have this unique offer only for you for that object you're thinking to buy. Here we have a firm A that needs to set a schedule, one for each consumer X. Basically, the idea is to try to match the next best alternative. So I think this is quite intuitive. This is a sort of standard given PB, given the price of firm B, which is posted and everybody can observe. Firm A tries to give the same utility, so that implies that the schedule for each consumer X, the second part of equation 1, is basically how the personalization happens. Basically, you can see that the further consumer are, the lower will be the price they are offered. Okay. For us, what is going to be important is that there are two situations that can arise depending on how high or low is PB. Okay, so if PB is lower than the T is the transport cost. Maybe I forgot to mention it before. Just T is the standard hoteling transport cost or differentiation parameter. If the price is less than T, the price of the rival firm without information is less than T, then firm A cannot match all of the price is so low that firm A can only attract some consumers, the consumers that are closer to firm A, and not all. So all consumers located between 0 and X bar can be attracted. And so in this case, importantly for us, firms do share the profiled market. So that's one possible situation. The second possible situation is when the price of B is relatively high, so higher than the transport cost parameter. In this case, firm A can attract all consumers. So price of B is sufficiently high that PA tilde is going to be always positive for any X between 0 and 1. In this case, the average price is going to be PB, and the second firm completely gives up. Firm B completely gives up the profiled segment. Okay, so these are going to be important because they allow me then to recall these results to understand what's going on in the second stage. Okay, so that's
Carlo, I have two quick questions here in the chat window that I think are a good fit for this slide. Could you clarify, if a consumer sees the personalized price by firm A, can that consumer also choose the non-personalized price by the very same firm?
No, that's a very good question, and that's crucial. So the consumer receives a personalized offer, but does not see and cannot opt for the standard PA. They have to choose the. They basically click on the personalized offer and they buy through the personalized offer. So that's crucial. We think in some situations it may be more or less realistic, but often consumers can be quite lazy and not particularly proactive in logging out of your Prime and seeing what is the price otherwise. So yeah, it's a good point. Thank you. There were two? Oh, okay. No, that's the only one. Okay. Okay. So okay, great. So good point. And so we have these two polar situations in which the profile market can be shared or not, depending on the price of firm B that doesn't have information. Right, so now I establish another important benchmark, which is the one of simultaneous pricing. So moving to second stage, assuming that what I said about the price on the other segment holds, we can look at what happens when firms are basically deciding the price for the anonymous, for the price, the posted price at the same time. Now, in this case, we can basically it's quite standard to solve this situation, and what we achieve is these equilibrium prices. Just abstracting from the expressions, which may not be too insightful, but they do depend on lambda, which is our length of the list or percentage of profiled people. What I want to tell you is that the fact that there is a list that is possessed by firm A makes competition fierce. So you may notice, if you have in mind a situation where there is no list, lambda equals 0, we may realize that the equilibrium would be a standard Hotelling model in which the price is equal to E, the transport cost parameter. In case lambda becomes positive, then both prices decrease. In particular, the price of firm B goes down substantially, more than the price of firm A. So, and the reason is that firm B has to compete aggressively in the profile segment because lambda, becomes bigger and bigger. So the anonymous segment shrinks, the standard Hotelling segment shrinks, and firm B wants to get some consumers also in the profile segment. So we are in the case of PB lower than T, as you remember from the previous slide, perhaps, right? And so firm B wants to challenge firm A in that segment, right? So in a way, firm A. Yep.
Can I interrupt for another clarifying question by Flavio Pena real quick? Flavio,
yep. Sorry. Yes, I have a question about the equation there is on slide 16.
Okay.
When you are calculating, or maybe it was before. Yeah, when you're calculating the profits, my question is this: if lambda is quite small,
yep.
Doesn't that allow firm A to completely to attract all the customers that are identified? Because in this setting, even if the segment that is identified is quite small, firm B can always take some of the customers. So
if the price is less than T, firm B can get some customers.
So even if lambda is lower than X bar, that's my question.
Lambda is simply multiplying, it's basically giving the weight in the profit function of each segment. So I don't think it affects, it will affect the incentive to choose PB, of course, but it doesn't affect the split. The split is only driven by the fact that PB is below or above T. Not by lambda. Okay.
Thank you.
Lambda, if I can go back,
Yes.
it's only the weight. So how many people are profiled is lambda. Okay.
Okay, so it's like we have two different segments of unit weight, one in which the customers are identified and the other in not. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank
so,
you.
Yeah, in a way, the two segments are identical. They're just different sizes.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. Thank you for the question. Okay, so just to go well, basically to go back to the simultaneous pricing situation. I told you that the prices go down compared to a benchmark where there was no list, and that's because firm B needs to be quite aggressive and gain consumers also on the profile segment. So coming back to the question that I received, firm B cannot or doesn't want to give up that segment, and so becomes more aggressive in competition, and firm A likewise prices below T. Okay, so in a way we have a result despite the changing a lot in the context, but still price discrimination can be pro-competitive despite the fact that one firm has a list of consumers, like in the standard literature on personalized pricing. So so that's sort of situation again for simultaneous competition. Now we'll turn to the situation in which firm B without data is leading. And then finally, the situation, the more complex situation where firm A with the data is leading. Okay, so if firm B is the leader in price competition, set the price first, we have two scenarios, two cases that are very important, are particularly important. So it can be that the list is relatively short, is less than 3/5, so 0.6, so short. I mean, short or intermediate, let's say. It's just a threshold. In this case, the equilibrium is featuring what I would like you to notice is that the prices are higher than T. Okay, so again, moving back, remembering what I told you about the list segment, we have a situation in which both firms price higher than T, than the transport cost parameter. So what it means is that prices are relatively high compared to a benchmark, let's say where there is no information. As you see, lambda does not affect the prices. It will affect the profits, but not the prices. And the idea here is that the firm B, the leader, can post a sufficiently high price, higher than the transport cost parameter, and gives up the profile segment. Okay, the profile segment is relatively small, so that firm B doesn't focus on that. They just focus on being the leader. They want to charge a high price for the anonymous segment. Okay, firm A then is allowed to undercut, but still the price is by following can undercut, but the price is still relatively high. And firm A serves, of course, both the profile segment. They serve all the profile segment and also part of the other one. Okay, so this is the first situation. So relatively high price if the list is not too long. If the list is long and a lot of people are profiled, so the weight in the profit function of the list is very high. Then what happens is that prices move back below T, the transport cost parameter. So again, competition becomes more fierce because of the list. And in this case, the segment of profile consumer is very important in the profit. It has a very high weight, and so prices are again lower. Firm B cannot let it go. Okay, so there are these two situations that already perhaps suggest the intuition of what we will be showing next. In a way, if the list is not too important, it's okay for the anonymous, for the firm without information to give up that segment. Okay, so that's the main message here. Okay, let me recap up to now, because I'll get now to the main result. So if prices are set simultaneously, we show that price determination can be pro-competitive, so the exclusive list leads to lower prices. However, if firm B leads, we can have, so it's important to have leadership, because in some cases, when the list is not too important, the prices can go up, and firm B in this case can give up the list segment. So and price and profits are relatively high. Okay, so let me get now to the second stage, and when firm A competes. So here we will have we have a situation in which firm A with information is the leader. It's more complicated, but I will spare you all the technical details. One thing I mentioned is that we will have two important thresholds. And as you see from this picture, the upper threshold is very close to, it's just an example, but it's quite a robust result. The upper threshold is quite high, very close to 1, and the lower, it changes a bit more with V, the evaluation of consumers, but still it's relatively low. So this will give rise to at least three regions that I'll be talking about now. Right. So what happens if firm A is leader? So when firm A is leader, if we are below the lower threshold, so when the list is relatively small, not many people are on the list, well, then again, our intuition about when there's no list applies. In a way, prices are still quite relatively low, and basically, since the profile segment is relatively small, it's not worth for firm A to post a very high price and lose it, basically, because anonymous segment is very big, and it's important to make profits on there. So in principle here, it would be possible to post a very high price being the leader. If firm A is the leader, could be posting a very high price, but it's not profitable to do so, given that the list segment is so small. Things change, and that's very important when the list is intermediate. And again, we have a very big, quite large space of parameters in which the list is between intermediate size. And in this case, the intuition that the profile segment is important enough applies. So what firm A is doing here, it's to post an extremely high price, the highest possible price as the leader. Of course, this is equal to the evaluation, and this price will never be paid by anyone. It's too high. What happens is that firm B can instead undercut, being the follower, and post a lower price that allows to serve all consumers on the anonymous segment. So all consumers in the anonymous segment will pay V minus T, which is still quite high, given that V is high according to our assumption. And this situation allows then firm A to, match the offers, the price PB for all consumers in the list segment. All profile consumers can be matched because the price is higher than T. Okay, and it's quite high. So basically, what we have a sort of in this region, we have a sort of leadership as a semi-collusive device, let's say, because again, being a price leader simply means posting a realistically high price that allows firm B to get all the anonymous consumer segment. So as you can see from the picture, all consumers, anonymous consumers, go to firm B, And instead, firm A reaps the benefits by matching and charging high prices on the profile segment. And this is an equilibrium provided that the list is not too short or not too long. Okay, so this is where it all breaks down, is when the list is very long. So when the list is particularly long, in this case, unfortunately, the intuition is that firm B cannot abandon the list segment because almost all consumers are on the list. And given that, of course, then firm A is not able to induce such a high prices. So whatever firm A chooses, firm B will be unfortunately posting a price, unfortunately for firms, a low price, and that leads to very fierce competition and low equilibrium, relatively low equilibrium price. And again, in this case, firms basically split these segments again. We don't have that specialization like in the previous case. Okay, so I can now, if there is any question, I can take it now, or otherwise I can go to the implication and conclusion. I don't know, I don't see any more. Bernard. Any questions? No, all good, fantastic. So let me check the implications, starting from leadership, incentive to lead. So, first thing first, we need to go back to the first stage. As I told you, normally firms like to be followers, and we have these two equilibria. In this situation, we when lambda is equal 0. Okay, we have these several situations. Now, what happens when lambda, when there is many people on the list, when there is a list with people on it? Well, the first result that we can tell is that firm B always want to follow. So the firm that doesn't have any information still always want to follow, like as if there was no list. So in this picture, I can show you with the picture, the basically solid line is telling us what happens when firm A leads and firm B follows. So firm B following always get a higher, even if in this part maybe is less clear from the picture, but the solid line is always dominating. So firm B still wants to be a follower, like as if there was no list of consumers. Things are more interesting for firm A. For firm A, we know that there were those thresholds that I mentioned before. There is one more threshold here, and we can see that if basically the number of the percentage of profile consumers is above this threshold, which is about 0.335 approximately. In this case, so if the list has more than 35%, let's say in our example here, of consumers on it, being the leader, so the solid line is higher than the other situation. So the incentive to lead, we can see it from this point onwards. So the result we obtain in terms of leadership is that there is a payoff dominant equilibrium. So instead of having two equilibria, we still have two Nash equilibria, like in the standard situation. But if the list is sufficiently long, the firm profits, the firm A profits are so high that there is an incentive to lead, and this equilibrium where one leads and the other follows, when the firm with data leads and the other firm follows, is payoff dominant. So there is an incentive to be a leader in this case. Right. The second implication is about profits. If the profits, as I mentioned, and you could see from the previous pictures, are non-monotonic in the number of consumers that are, in the percentage of consumers that are on the list. As we can see in the beginning, if firm A is leading, for example, profits are quite low, but then they go very much up. And then if the list is too long, the profit of leading are still higher than the others, but go down quite a bit. Okay, so in a way, we have a situation in which when there are too many consumers profile, the profits decrease a lot. Okay, and especially particularly interesting for us is the situation of intermediate consumers. So in particular, when firm one wants to lead, so there is an intermediate number of consumers in the list. Basically, we have from the threshold I showed you in the picture to the higher one, lambda 2, we know that the leadership equilibrium will be payoff dominant, and so we will have this price manipulation mechanism that I mentioned, in which the price of A will be extremely high, firm B will basically undercut and get all the anonymous market, but both firms reap quite relatively high profits in the different segments. So they specialize on a segment. And one implication we can think about is that if firm A was to choose the number of profile consumers, well, then basically they would like to pick lambda 2. Again, I should go back to this diagram. As we can see, in close to the upper threshold lambda 2, the profit of A is maximized. And so basically that would be the choice if they could choose the length of the list. Okay, so the final implication is about the consumer surplus and welfare. Well, consumer surplus in this type of model is just sort of reflecting what we saw about profits, in particular, the opposite of what we saw about profit. In particular, we can see that consumer surplus is particularly low in this intermediate segment where firm A leads. And so that's really bad news for consumers, and this same collusive device works well for firms, but is very bad news for consumers. The good news is that if everybody is in the list, then this pro-competitive situation comes up, and we are in a situation very similar to simultaneous competition. Okay, so very similarly for total welfare is also minimized in the middle when there is an intermediate amount of consumers in the list. And the situation is made also worse because this perfect segmentation also increases a lot transport cost. So, so that's the reason why we have such a bad situation in the middle. Because consumers don't get their most favorite product, but depending on if they're on the list or the other, they get to travel to one or the other supplier. Okay, so I think I have a couple of minutes to wrap up if there are no urgent questions. Bernard, anything? No? Okay, excellent. So just to summarize what I have been saying, so generally it is thought that competitive price discrimination can be beneficial to consumer. This is particularly the case when firms are symmetric, and this is also being used. I don't have so much time to show, but it's also the case when it's being used in reports about price discrimination, and so usually price discrimination with competition is good news. However, it may not be the case, may not always be the case. The costs often are related to privacy concerns, and there is literature in this direction. We also said that there is a debate about consumer level big data, whether they can or not generate a competitive advantage. Again, big questions. Our paper can contribute, give a little bit, give one possible contribution to this debate, particularly for future scenario, maybe because, of course, it's based on a very stylized model that assumes a lot of strong assumption, of course, but we can sort of take some conclusion. In particular, we can suggest that there may be a competitive advantage under certain circumstances. when firms spontaneously coordinate. So when basically there is a not too high percent, not too high, not too low percentage of the consumers on a list of exclusive information that one firm holds, and these can lead to a price manipulation that is beneficial to firms, but not so much to consumers. So, as I mentioned, this is in line with the concerns of the formal report, and again, this is probably the main message of our paper. So there can be very bad outcomes for consumers when we have a situation where there is a price manipulation of this type. Just a very final, if I have one extra minute, no, maybe not. Okay, so one thing to mention is also our contribution to the endogenous timing literature, in which we contribute by showing that in presence of leadership can be an equilibrium in presence of an immaterial asset for one of the two firms. But maybe one last thing about policy implication, and then I conclude, is again the fact that per se access even to exclusive data may not be anti-competitive, but let's be careful, because there could be situation in which basically consumers are damaged in case our price manipulation mechanism may arise in equilibrium. So not per se, but there are some certain circumstances in which we need to be cautious. And in those cases, maybe mandatory data sharing may allow to achieve a more symmetric situation in terms of information that does not allow anymore to have this kind of price manipulation mechanism. So generally, again, unlike some reports that suggest that basically tacit coordination, personalized pricing are not likely to occur, our results basically say that, well, maybe, but maybe it may occur in presence of exclusive information and access to exclusive information and under certain circumstances. So, okay, I think I am now out of time, so I'll give it back to Bernard for questions and discussion. Thank you.